Hello, I'm Professor Lieu here today with art prof teaching artist Jordan McCracken-Foster. Welcome to our video where we give tips for artists. Today we are talking about 5 ways you can stop comparing yourself to other artists. If you would like to grow as an artist but you cannot afford an art class, we've got everything you need here at Art Prof, critiques, tutorials. You want to get started by subscribing to our channel and ringing the bell to make sure you don't miss out on anything. Jordan, comparing yourself to other artists, is this something you've done before?
Oh, all the time. It happens, if not daily, then at least weekly. It's something that's constant in my life for sure.
Why do you think we all do this? Because I'm the same way. I'm always comparing myself to other artists, and I'm a well established professional.
Yeah. I think part of it is just the way we learn. When we're growing up, you learn something is the right way and something is the wrong way to do something. And I think, over time when you're doing something creative, whether it's art or music, and you have all these inspirations, because, there's not really much inspiration for, learning the alphabet unless you want to be able to, it's like, wow, I aspire to recite the alphabet just like this person, it doesn't, no, it doesn't really work like that. But when it comes to art, music, acting, whatever, people have these individuals they look up to. And I think when it's something you're really passionate about, something you're really excited about, it can become overbearing, especially when you're in a point in your life where things are discouraging or you don't feel like you're growing as quickly. So I think that, that combined with probably many other factors is why we would compare ourselves to different artists.
Hello to those of you in the chat, Tammy, E.G., Lahona, and Amaris. I'd love to hear from all of you who are watching right now, whether you compare yourself to other artists, whether it's a problem for you, different ways you try to cope with it, or if you're just really having a hard time. Because I've been speaking to a lot of high school students and my college students as well, and I guess I didn't realize how toxic it can be to compare yourself. A lot of students have told me that they look at stuff on Instagram and they say to themselves, why didn't I come up with that? That artist has such a great style. They feel like they know exactly what they're doing and they have so much work, and that artist can paint faces better than me. I mean, it goes on and on and on. For me, I'm not somebody who thinks about the technical side of it as much. For me, it's like, oh, they won a Guggenheim. I have no Guggenheim grant award. It's like, comes down to anything. You can compare yourself in so many different ways. And I had a student who told me that she really feels on social media a need to prove herself all the time because otherwise she feels like she's not as good of an artist.
Mhm.
And she said that at one point she was experimenting with less realistic looking drawings. And her friends were joking online that, oh, you lost all your drawing technique. You can't draw anymore. And it upset her so much that she said she actually went and did a really boring, hyper realistic still life to prove to her friends that she could still draw that way.
Yeah, that's got to be really hard. First of all, just doing that subject, that's super boring still life. That's got to be soul crushing on so many levels. Because, of all the things to prove your skills as a drafts person, um, feeling the need to do something like that, I can't imagine how discouraging that must be.
Not fun. Let's see. Hello, 10,000 Crows. Amaris is saying, I get stuck in that mindset of comparing myself to others. And EG is saying, I compare myself all the time, even comparing myself to my own best friend, an amazing artist, and I feel bad about it constantly. I find myself unable to make art that satisfies me. That EG, I think, is actually the most difficult thing when it's your friend, because then you feel
Mhm.
extra bad about it, right?
Yeah.
And it's tricky because it's like they're so close to you and you know them so well. I had the exact same thing in high school. I had this
Yeah.
wonderful friend I met at a summer pre college program, and I was intensely jealous of her drawings, and it bothered me a lot. Okay,
Mhm.
let's go through 5 ways you guys can try to stop doing this. I don't expect that any of us can, but at the very least, we can find some coping mechanisms. So the first one is that I think as an artist, you really can carve your own place. And the way I describe it is that let's say you're an Olympic diver and you're going to the Olympics, there's only one gold medal. If you don't win the gold medal, you didn't win, and it's very cut and dry. Or if you watch like the Super Bowl, okay, everybody's all excited. Oh, these two teams made it to the Super Bowl. But in the end, nobody cares about the person that lost the Super Bowl, right?
Yeah, pretty much. That's pretty clear. Yeah. Yeah. I think for me at least, the way I think of that is I'm someone who's focused on like the entertainment industry and getting that high up job and things like that. But the thing is, there's a lot of jobs going around, and we live in a time where a lot of people are being able to create their own projects and work with the people they want to. There's a story that I like to share about this man named Bobby Chu, and he runs a something called Schoolism. It's like a art education platform as well. It's also online. But he and some of his buddies, like three or four of them, they decided to get together on the weekend and they wanted to create this big project. And they wanted to make the world's first fully animated comic book app. And they did that. It was called Nico and the Sword of Light. And they spent, weekends and long hours and all this stuff. And now it's running on Amazon. And it's got its own TV show. And now it's at a place where they made their own thing, and they were pretty good as it was. They weren't trying to compete with anyone else. They just said, we want to create something really cool. And so there's so many places for you. Even if you have to create your own thing, there's not really a situation where, you have to compete with, uh, this artist, and if you don't match this artist, then it means you're terrible. That's not really how it works. It's about a community.
There's always room for more awesome artists, right?
Right.
Like, even if you
Yeah,
said, oh, there are 50 great artists, you just say, oh, here's another one. Now we have 51. We're not going to run out
right.
of space. It's totally
Exactly.
fine for that to be the case. Let's see in the chat. Lahona saying, for me, there are two faces to this. My artwork goes a bit weird on its own that I don't have a reference point, either from art history, what's going on now. The other piece, as friends have a need to tell me what is, quote, wrong, plus tell me ways to correct my errors, usually things I like about my work, so I limit my possibilities for feedback. Yeah, I don't talk to my friends, Lahona, about my artwork because oftentimes they tell me something that's just so off that I can't even process it. So I have very specific people who I'm like, this is somebody I talk to for feedback. Like, Jordan, do you have any specific friends
Oh
like
yeah,
that?
definitely. Especially at school, I'll send my work to maybe four or five other people. One of them is usually a professor, and the others are, even if their skill level isn't um, a place where they want to be at, or they. And some of them have told me they feel like I'm a better artist than they are in a lot of ways in terms of just skill level. Their feedback is so strong, and they can see things that I can't. So I'll always trust them. I'll go like I have a friend named Ryan who I'm like, hey, I need you to tell me what you think, and I'll get draw overs and all these comments, and I'm like, I didn't see any of these things. Okay, let me work on that. And it's awesome.
Tammy is saying, when I create a piece, I like it, but then ask myself, what is so spectacular about it? I don't know enough about art to know what's good and what's not. So I am a closet art maker. I think it's really hard when you don't have something to compare it to, but then sometimes when you compare it to something, you end up feeling worse about yourself. It can be very challenging. And Lahona is
Mhm.
saying that her friends are hypercritical. I do listen and also pick up on a funky undertone. Yeah, it's hard. You got to be careful who you speak to about your work. Okay, number
Mhm.
two is, I think, to ask yourself, what can I say as an artist that no one else on the planet can talk about? Now, I'm talking about thematically. I'm not talking about like art technique or something like that. So, Jordan, what would you say you as an artist can talk about that, say, I can't talk about?
Um, it's funny. I was having a conversation like this with a friend of mine just 2 or 3 days ago. She wants to create her own like project, like her own book, uh, and she's Chinese, but for some reason she really loves ancient Egyptian history, like no one else have ever seen. And I was like, that combination is so interesting. Like you don't see many people like that. And if you create this project, you're going to be able to answer to several different audiences just based off of that. So the way I see it, you can talk about gender, you can talk about race or ethnicity, just life experience in general, to maybe social class or something that's familiar, maybe a sport or likes and dislikes. And I'm working on a project right now for my thesis. And what I did was I basically thought about all the things that I like and enjoy from different books and movies and stuff like that. And I wrote like the basic theme, like I like adventure. I like things that are really colorful. I like, teenage heroes, like that kind of stuff. And I put it all together and I mixed some of my own influences, like uh, old school hip hop culture and just things like that. And I melted it all together, and it's just become my own thing. And I'm pretty confident that if I like enough of these things, that someone else in the world will be able to relate. And if they don't, if it doesn't relate to other people, then it's something that I would still want to work on just because I like it. And so I try not to put that much pressure on myself to always please other people because that's not always what art's about. Oftentimes, I find that when we like something ourselves, then other people will find a way to appreciate it.
I think that for me, my biggest struggle when I was comparing myself to other artists was really in terms of technique. And I think that's the one that's the easiest to target because you could say, oh, well, I don't feel like I'm very good at drawing portraits. Wow, here's somebody who's so good at it and they have incredible colors and they can paint so well. And I had somebody like that. My senior year in art school, there was somebody in my painting class who was such a good oil painter. Like, and I kept trying to rationalize in my head why they weren't good at painting. Like I'd be like, they need to work more on lighting. And then at the end of the day, I go, Clara, you are just so full of it. Her painting is so freaking good. You are never going to be able to measure up. And I couldn't. Every week, I would come in and see what they did for their homework and just feel crushed. It was
Hmm.
terrible because I felt like senior year is sort of the year that people start to find themselves and feel a little bit more confident about their doing. And this just was
Hmm.
soul crushing. So many
Yeah.
years later, the way I reconciled with it is I asked myself, what can I talk about in my artwork that that person will never be able to talk about? And what I ended up doing was creating a whole series of portraits and sculptures that dealt with my own experience with mental health and depression. And I literally ended up saying in my head, see, you can talk about this the way I can. I'm the only person that has this story and I own it. And this is not available to you artistically speaking. And it empowered me to realize that, you know what? I have stuff in my life that I want to share that nobody else can touch. And that's a wonderful feeling, I think, once you start to realize that.
Yeah, I like the way I like to think about it is like there are no two people who are going to have the exact same life experience, even if there are similarities. You could both be from the same country or from the same neighborhood, or even you can even be twins, but your life experience will not be the exact same. There's always going to be something. Like I remember when I was in high school, there was I think in the grade below me or two grades below me, there was a set of twins, and one of them was clearly maturing faster than the other one. His voice was getting deeper. He's a little taller. He was a little bit more suave, you could say. And the other one took a couple months to catch up, even though technically he was actually the older twin by like 10 minutes or something like that. And so their life experience, what they dealt with, is totally different, even with something like that. Um, so for everyone out there, just know that there is something that you can latch onto that is unique to you as a person. Doesn't just because a lot of other people may lean on maybe their race or something like that for a specific topic doesn't mean that it's going to match yours specifically the same way.
EG is saying those are incredible works. Thank you very much, EG. And Tammy is saying dig into what you know and love. And EG saying, I can understand the feelings in the artwork, and that's crazy awesome. Yeah, I just have to tell you though, the time period between senior year of art school when I was crushed by this other student and these drawings, I think it was 16 years. So it took a while. It did not happen quickly, but it did eventually. But of course, then I instantly Googled her and checked out her work and said, oh, see, I'm talking about my own thing. Okay, let's talk about number three, which is that number one, progress is not linear and that everybody grows at a totally different pace. Jordan, what's
Mhm.
been your experience with that?
It's funny. Like when I was younger, let's say up through about high school, I was pretty advanced. I actually got an award in my school for being the best artist of my year, and I just practiced a lot. And when I got to school, I felt like that all the fame that I had in my high school that would just follow me into into my undergrad, and that is not what happened. And I felt like getting into the undergrad experience for the first time and getting all the critique and realizing that not all my ideas were the best ideas at the time and just getting the real deal. uh it was a little soul crushing at a certain point, and looking back, I almost felt like I stagnated myself, not in on purpose, but I think my mindset kind of made me stall a little bit. And it wasn't really until I got little ways through grad school that some of those barriers started to be broken up a little bit. And and the thing I have to just keep remembering is that life in general, but specifically art, is, that journey to growth is a marathon and not a sprint. So there are some people who now are like, 15 or 16 years old, and I look at their work and I'm like, whoa, they're way ahead of what I was doing at that time. But who knows? Maybe that's something that's just a hobby for them, or maybe you're gonna pick something up and just instantly be like, "Bam! You get it." And obviously, working and practicing it plays a role in that. But I try not to get overly discouraged because in reality, every artist I know is still trying to get better. Doesn't matter how old they are. It's one of those things like um, like a musician can always create another piece that's even more beautiful than the one they did previously. That's how I feel like visual art is in a lot of ways. So yeah, that's what I'll say about that.
Ashley is saying in the chat, but it always seems like when you think you have thought of an original idea, you Google it and it's been done 10 times over. That's true for everything. I mean, if you think about the movies, how many times have we recycled Romeo and Juliet? I mean, it's like every year there's like 15 new versions. So you
Yeah,
can say, oh, well, everything that I want to do has been done. And so then you just accept it and you say, what is the Clara Lieu version of Romeo and Juliet, right? Like if I asked you, Jordan, to make a painting of Romeo and Juliet, it would not be the same as mine. And yes, it
right.
could be really similar to maybe someone else's, but that's where you start whittling it down and you start to let that idea mature and get more specific. And that's when it becomes more original. Because I think for a lot of people, the reason sometimes that their artwork can come across as a little bit more generic is that they haven't spent enough time thinking about it. So that specificity, I think, is really, really important.
Right.
My example of growing at a different pace is that, unlike Jordan and everybody on my team, I was a really late bloomer. I don't think that I really understood a lot of fundamental ways to think about things until I was well out of grad school. And I was like 28 when I was out of grad school. And I look at the people I have in my staff and I just think to myself, I am so glad I was not in the same class as Kat Huang, who's a teaching artist, because Kat writes these beautiful, poetic stories, and she illustrates them with so much grace and elegance and research, and they're incredibly sophisticated. I'm like, dude, I wasn't even thinking about stories. I just was like, how do I draw this? Like, I wasn't even there. I was so obsessed with getting my technique better. Or Alex Rowe, who's a teaching artist. I mean, I am profoundly jealous of Alex's gouache painting skills, and I have accepted that I am never going to get there in terms of gouache painting skills. And then I have other students like Annalise Yee, who ran this copper tooling tutorial. She taught me this technique. I did not know how to do this. And now it's a project that I run with a lot of my classes. And then Song Kang, who is also one of my former students, she actually just shot 3 tutorials with us. And I look at Song's work and I just, again, think I am so glad I am not Song's age, because Song is my former student. And so I can look at her work and say, oh, Song, I'm so proud of you. I don't have to be like intensely jealous. Jordan, do you feel like you tend to get more jealous of artists who are maybe around the same age, or do you think it doesn't matter?
Um, yeah, that happens oftentimes. Where there are several students I can think of who I won't mention right now who are younger than me by like 2 or 3 years, and they're amazing. And they're faster. They can create better concepts and ideas. And at this point, what I've realized is it's more of a mental block than anything. It's not so much that I can't actively produce the same things that they can. It's just that for whatever reason, there's something in my mind, in the back of my mind, saying, "Oh, you have to measure up to this," and and I have to constantly be pushing that out of my mind. And it's very difficult. I'll be really honest. Sometimes I don't even succeed at doing it. That's how powerful that thing that can be. I know there's already been a stream down on the whole mental health side of things, but that can be really really challenging. And something else I also want to say. Speaking of like late bloomers, we're just mentioning. Everyone knows I'm a Spider-Man fan, and and one of the little tidbits of knowledge or information that I like to repeat to myself whenever I get discouraged. The writer, the one who co-created Spider-Man, Stan Lee, he didn't create Spider-Man until he was about 40 years old. And I think it was like 1962, and he was about to quit the comic book industry because it was just so difficult. And the only reason he stayed was because his wife told him not to. And after that, he did Fantastic Four and X-Men and Spider-Man, all this stuff. And now we know him as a legend. And he was a late bloomer. At 40, most people are kind of thinking like, man, I'm out of options. Of course, now we know he lived to be like 95 or 96 years old, so that wasn't even half his life yet. But it's never too late to start something and make it awesome.
Right. I mean, I don't feel like I even began to hit my stride until I was 32 years old. And I look at
Right.
some of my students, some of them are like less than half my age now. I mean, I teach sophomores, they're like 19. And I think about what they talk to me about and their ideas, and I look at their progression, and I just think, oh my gosh, I was not even close to this. But you
Yeah.
have to be okay with it, because if you keep at it and you stay really focused, you can get there. But like you said, it's a marathon. You have to have that patience. And a lot of people are really good at sprinting. And actually, the flip side of this is I went to art school with a couple people who really were like art school superstars. You know these people at art school? You just want to kill them because
Yeah.
they're so good at everything and they make everything look so
Yeah.
easy. I went to school with some people like that. Some of them are not making artwork anymore. It's almost like they had this incredible sprint and then everything just
Hmm.
died after a little bit.
Yeah.
So there's many different versions of artist stories out there.
Yeah.
Let's see.
Definitely.
Panda Steph is saying in the chat, I really need this. Danny, so happy that you guys could all join us. Okay, let's move on to reason number 4. I think we're going to have a stream at some point about how social media, particularly Instagram, can be a little bit unhealthy for some people. But I just want to mention that an option, instead of sharing publicly on Instagram, create a little group of your trusted friends. I'm talking like 3, 4 people, and just share your work there. Jordan, what do you think's the difference between that and just posting to everybody on Instagram?
Well, so when it comes to posting things to only to or giving sharing things with only your close friends, their goal usually, if they're good friends, 99.9% of the time is not to hurt you or your feelings. Their whole goal is going to try and help you to improve. I have at least 2 or 3 different group chats where we'll just send each other work, and we'll give each other feedback. And, sometimes we're up till, 3, 4 in the morning. I don't necessarily recommend that, but we're up really late and we're sending stuff and we're trying to, give each other feedback before the assignments due. And it's meant to help build you up. It's like a boot camp in a way. Whereas when you're posting on social media, there's a lot of fear that comes from that because now it's posted to everyone. Anyone who has access to Instagram or Facebook or whatever can see this. And oftentimes there's a sort of fear and intimidation that comes from that. And even I get intimidated to post things on Instagram, and it's a challenge because you don't know what feedback you're going to get. There's a lot of trolls out there, even we as our prof crew, we get those every once in a while. And you're kind of just going out in the wild, not knowing what you're going to face. And you have to learn how to balance that. So,
And I think a lot of it is this constant fear of rejection on Instagram. And
yeah,
sometimes the form of rejection is not a bad comment. Sometimes it's just, wow, nobody reacted at all. I got no comments. I got a couple likes, and that's it. And I think for a lot of people, that is more upsetting than if somebody said, Jordan, you're a dip crap idiot, right? Like that's just somebody being a jerk, and you can laugh that off. But being
yeah,
ignored is a lot worse. And so I would say
mm,
if you guys struggle with that, we do have this stream that I did a little ways back about being rejected as an artist. There are many more forms of it beyond just social media, but I do recommend a couple of strategies for how to cope with that because as an artist, you are going to encounter rejection many times over, and you have to learn how to really work with that. One
right,
option that one of my high school students told me is that they create group chats based on their art class at school. So you probably have like, I don't know, what, 15 people, maybe not everybody wants to be a part of it. So it's a more private space and it doesn't feel like it's about a competition. I know a lot of high school students I talk to, they say that they see Instagram as more of a competition than as a sharing space. And I think that's what a
mm,
group chat is. It doesn't feel like, oh, who's is better? Who got more likes? It's like, here are people I know. Here are people I
mm,
trust. We have a shared passion. And let's just see what everybody else is doing. That's what it should be. But it
right.
doesn't end up being that way. Ashley
You,
is saying, I don't like to post on Instagram because my ideas and concepts are constantly changing. And I'll look back on some ideas and think, wow, that was really offensive, really dumb, but it's too late. Yeah. I know the feeling. Absolutely.
I,
So just,
yeah, I,
you don't have to post on social media. I mean, Jordan, how often do you post on Instagram?
I hardly do. And honestly, just referring to the last comment from Ashley, um, if you don't, if you post something and say like 6 months later, you look back and you're like, oh, that's stupid, you can always remove it. I mean, no, you don't have to have it on your profile still. There's plenty of things that I posted on my personal Instagram that I look back on, I'm like, wow, that's a horrible drawing. And I thought about deleting it, but then I think, there's gonna come a time where I look back on this and where I'm feeling discouraged and I'll see the growth that I've made. And maybe that will also register to other people who go on my profile and they'll see like, oh wow, this drawing from 2 years ago was okay, but then they see the current work, I'm like, whoa, he's grown so much. And so I keep it up there for that reason. And but obviously not everyone has to do that. So yeah, and also before I forget, I did want to mention about sharing your work with a group of close friends, um, and this also goes with the artistic community thing. Try to surround yourself or be in a group of people who are better at you than something, because by doing that, you're going to grow much faster. I have a friend who's an amazing painter, and she's in one of the group chats that I'm a part of, and she's always posting this amazing stuff. And she's better at painting, but what she's admitted to me is I'm better at human anatomy, and so we'll be able to help each other out. And so, and you just grow that much faster. And maybe sometimes you don't get that same amount of time with your teacher, but you can get it from the classmates that you're around and your fellow students. So definitely utilize that to your advantage.
Absolutely. Danny J is saying, I like Instagram because one, likes aren't shown to the public. Number two, I like the idea that people may be more likely to be honest rather than friends that may just say, wow, you're so good. And let's see, Aji Hay is saying, I see it as if I realize my old art is bad. That means I'm improving. And Hamza is saying, what I might hate doing might be a learning curve for me as well. Criticism is key for that. Yeah, I mean, I think those are all really good positive spins on that. I mean, that never occurred to me to look back and say, wow, I've improved a lot. I guess I haven't gone there, but I think I'm going to start doing that now, Jordan. That sounds really helpful. So, these are ways to pivot your point of view on how you share your work and where you share your work, because it doesn't have to be all the time. I used to post a lot, and then I got busy with art prof, and then I started thinking, should I? And I was like, I don't care. It's fine. Right? The world is going to stay. Okay, that
Right.
brings us to reason number 5, which is that the vast majority of artists online will not show their doubt, failure, and anxiety. Like, Jordan, when you are feeling sort of down about your work and you're struggling a little bit, do you tell people that in your Instagram posts?
Heck no, are you kidding me? Are you,
What
no.
do you do
Huh?
if you're feeling
At school?
bummed about your stuff?
If I'm feeling bummed, I go to like a small group, probably the same group I just mentioned, that I talked about a second ago. But I wouldn't let the whole world know that. Because it's for me, that's something that's very private, and I also just don't want to be a Debbie Downer the whole time. Uh, but yeah, I wouldn't show because when you show your failures and your experiments and stuff like that, sometimes that can be really crushing if other people don't like it. Because if you don't like it, then chances are other people won't like it as well. Like there's a reason why certain music artists don't release their demos all the time because they know it's underdeveloped and it's not perfect the way that it's supposed to look or sound. And that's totally okay. That's the experimentation phase. And everyone, especially our artists, is entitled to have that. And, I think it's just like there's a fear of rejection, there's a fear of failure as well. And as much as I hate to say it, that's kind of inevitable when you want to be an artist. You're not gonna get perspective right on the first try. And if you do get it right on the first try, there's gonna be some point where it's off, or you draw the human figure incorrectly. And I was critiquing a friend of mine, and she drew one of the bones in the collar, or like the clavicle, the acromion process, which is like this bump right here on the uh, edge of your clavicle and scapula, and it was in the wrong place, but she didn't realize that. And I was like, you have to fix that before you post it because someone's going to notice this, and you don't want people seeing your failures like that. So we all try and hide it.
Yeah, and I think that unfortunately, the consequence of that, I think it's a really big disservice to a lot of younger artists because it can
Mhm.
feel when you're looking at someone's Instagram feed, wow, everything that artist pops out is amazing and polished and incredible. And that is so not the way it is. Like, Jordan,
Yeah,
out of all the artwork you produce, like everything, sketches and digital stuff, what percentage of that actually makes it onto your Instagram?
probably like less than 1%.
Yeah. I mean, for me, I would say maybe 20% of my work actually gets seen online. It's higher, probably
Mhm.
because I have to do all these shows and everything like that, and I'm not in school. But I think that younger artists need to see and understand that, you know what? We all make really bad work. It's just part of being an
Yeah.
artist. So, you know what I did, Jordan? I went through into my drive and I pulled a lot of crappy drawings that I have done that I have never posted online. So, let me show you guys this one. I was in
Oh
China
boy.
and I was sketching this building that was across the street from my hotel. And it's so crappy. This is the drawing. It looks like nothing. I never posted it on Instagram because I'm like, what would be the point of that? It was really, really bad. And I didn't feel like it was a drawing that I learned from, so it wasn't really a teachable moment. This one got totally axed. Now, I have a lot of other drawings that are in my sketchbook that really are just quick little doodly things. And if you saw this, your average person would not be impressed. They'd go, oh, yeah, those are nice. Yeah, great, right? Because the thing is, Jordan, these quick gesture drawings, they're just not that glamorous. Like, they're not that appealing to a lot of people, don't you think?
Yeah, I mean, there are some people who are really good at it. I'm still trying to climb my way up, but a second ago I just looked over. I was going to see if I could pull some drawings out as an example because I have a stack of paper that's probably it's bigger than my face. That's actually how tall it is. Because it's like this thick, and it's just figure drawings. I have a few behind. Actually, I have a few behind here. Let's see. Let's grab this out. Like these are just you know got some vehicle sketches and stuff like that here, but there's so much that I've never posted and just don't share just because it's for me, it's for my growth. And if I'm excited about something, then I'll post it. And there's some things I actually really do like that I still haven't posted. So I don't find like my Instagram is more like an accessory to me, or posting on social media. It doesn't. I don't feel like it's always a requirement to post on those things. Now, if I'm trying to make Instagram my portfolio, that's a different story. But I probably wouldn't do that anyway.
Let's see. Danny is saying in the chat, I like it when influencers post, quote, ugly pictures like Jane Fonda did recently, or like how Ali Wong does with her kids sometimes. It shows fallibility, and honestly, I think the same goes with art. Tammy is saying, your doodles impress me. Cool, because I think your average person would be like, that's your drawing teacher? I'm sorry. So Jordan and I are here to say, look, we all doubt ourselves. We all get anxious about our work. We all make bad, failed drawings that we're embarrassed to show people, although I just did. So it's all out there now. It's all in the name of art education. That's fine. My ego can take it, I hope. And that not everybody knows what they're doing, and not everybody pops out perfect artwork all the time. And if you keep that in mind, I think you'll realize that you can't compare yourself to someone's edited, polished version of themselves, because none of us could compare to something like that. Sister Bear is saying, I like the same thing, Danny J. I love unfinished drawings and doodles. I admit I get a little annoyed when artists post it's a sketch and it's clearly a finished rendered piece ready for a frame. Yeah, that's annoying. That would bother me quite a bit.
Some artists.
Okay, guys, I hope you'll explore some of our other related videos on artist rejection, artist communities, and mental health. And thank you so much to our top Patreon supporters who make all of this possible. And thank you to all of you guys in the chat. I love hearing all of your comments. Thank you so much for tuning in. We'll see you next time.